Hello, my name is David Williams, and this is a little essay on the brain, communication, and the environment. Most people think of the brain as the epitome of creation, the most wondrous achievement in the universe, and indeed, it is a marvel. But the construction of the brain itself leaves something to be desired, for as a product of natural and sexual selection, it was never designed, nor was it ever retrofit for humans to live in a world of cities, jobs, bosses, digital technology, money, and this particular level of stress. Truth is, our brains have a very clunky construction. One scientist said it was like strapping a computer onto a Model A. The brain has two hemispheres that are totally distinct except for the fact that they are linked together by a bundle of nerves called the corpus callosum, more tightly linked in women than in men. One side of the brain seems to collect information, while the other side interprets. In patients whose corpus callosum has been severed, one side of their brain will actually create a fictional story to account for what the other side has been doing, even though both hemispheres are housed in the same skull in the same body. As Carl Sagan once put it, the brain evolved the same way as cities, with the old town coming first, followed by the outlying downtown, then uptown, new town, the suburbs, and then the faraway farmland. As in the case of a city, the old does not go away. We still have the ancient brain that we shared with our ancestors, going back to the beginning. The reptilian brain, the mammal brain, the neocortex, each is laid over the top of the one preceding it. P.D. McLuhan first came up with this idea, which he called the triune brain. The old parts of the brain are by far the largest and take care of our bodily functions, respiration, digestion, appetites and desires such as food and sex. The limbic or emotional system is part of this old brain, which is connected to the new part, the neocortex, the more recent part that allows higher thought. But the old and new brains are totally wired together, and as neuroscientist Antonio Damasio has shown, there is no split between reason and emotion, as was once thought. As he says, we are feeling machines that think, not thinking machines that feel. Rationality and emotion are linked together, and without that link we could not function. We could not even make a decision, as patients of Damasio's with brain injuries have shown. As amazing as the brain is, it is not always good at discovering or recognizing truth. The brain likes to believe what it already knows, something called confirmation bias, and it will go to great extremes to prove itself right, even when there is direct evidence to the contrary. The brain also has various modules that perform differing functions without always talking to each other or even agreeing on the truth. Some modules might believe one thing while others might believe something else. For example, men tend to rate themselves as better looking than others do, while women tend to rate themselves exactly the same as other people do. From an evolutionary standpoint, it's not truth that matters, but what has allowed us to survive. Confidence is a quality that plays well for men in the mating game, so it was advantageous for the men's brains to lie about their looks. And also the brain is not that efficient or quick. While electricity can move through copper wires at the speed of light, neurons, which are about 750 million years old and first evolved with jellyfish, move information like a leaky water hose, as the axon uses molecular machines with moving parts to snap open and close to maintain a spike as it travels down its pathway. And there's ever only a chance that information will be passed from one neuron to another, from an axon to a dendrite, through the synapse. But the more information that is passed through a synaptic connection, the bigger the channel grows, which is why it is said that neurons that fire together wire together. When we think in certain ways or do things repeatedly, we are making those connections stronger. But we aren't born as blank slates, as was once believed, without any instincts or desires. Evolution has pre-wired us for many things, including the release of hormones at various times in our lives that greatly affect our behavior and make us desire this instead of that. And most of what goes on in the brain, some 98%, is below the level of consciousness. And the loop of mental wiring, the conscious part of the brain, is usually the last to know. So instead of a conscious and rational mind dictating our thoughts and actions, from deciding on what to buy to what to eat to whom to vote for, mostly it's the unconscious mind calling the shots. And emotion is the most powerful force in the brain. As a matter of fact, scientific evidence is showing that rational argumentation, indeed reason itself, most likely not to find improved truth, not to find more accurate representations of the world, but rather to generate and evaluate arguments within a social setting. In other words, so that two people can get along and cooperate through words, even if the one who wins the argument's final analysis is dead wrong. When we look at intelligence around the animal kingdom, high intelligence, as we define it, is almost always linked to social life. We did not become intelligent to get more food, but to read each other better. Another aspect of this is the recent discovery of mirror cells, which ignite in your brain when you watch someone else doing something. They ignite exactly as if you were the one swinging from a branch or playing a guitar. Our brains are wired to connect to each other, to feel empathy, and influence each other as well, at levels far below that of rationality and consciousness, in direct contradiction to what we have in the West have believed for hundreds of years. Even in the realm of morality, our brains make almost automatic calculations that are highly influenced by the pictures the brain creates. For instance, a brutal robbery of one person attacking another creates a greater emotional response than an airplane dropping bombs on thousands. The first seems visceral and repulsive, the other less so. We react poorly to statistics, but react in large ways to stories where there are characters with whom we can empathize. This is why a small story is often more powerful than a large one. In order to move people, we often have to bring the focus down to something evolution has programmed us to respond to. In the same vein, we are hardly ever afraid of getting into an automobile, but most people are terrified of jumping into the ocean. The image of confronting a shark is infinitely more frightening than a possible car crash, even though the chances of dying from a shark attack are infinitesimally smaller than dying by an automobile accident. We are not wired to handle huge problems like dying oceans, global warming, depleting fresh water, destruction of the rainforests, and the sixth great extinction of species on Earth as we are in now. We are wired to react to an immediate threat like a saber-toothed tiger. So when we communicate, we need to take into account how the brain actually operates and try to bring scientific information to people in ways that they can absorb it. Getting the news right is one of the great problems we face today, as the media, in trying to be fair and balanced, where reporters have to present two sides of a story, often leads people to draw the wrong conclusions. For instance, one side in a right or left argument might have zero scientific credibility. This confuses the public, making them think that everything has two sides that are equal, when from a scientific perspective they are not. The audience often thinks these days that everything is just opinion and all opinions are valid, totally ignoring scientific analysis based on actual data in peer review. Tackling the tough problems of our time will require that we make decisions based on reliable information and that people are informed in ways that allow truth to be heard, not just hearsay. Probably the most difficult thing we face as a species is in this regard, trying to get our ancient emotional brains to tackle the massive problems of the environment and economy, problems that often seem abstract, at least compared to a saber-toothed cat or a cave bear. Our minds must be emotionally engaged to handle very difficult situations, for without feeling these things are important, we will never get anything done. We must somehow trick our ancient, emotionally driven brains to respond to crises that our inventive but short-sighted minds have made.